That's exactly it. Hey, can you? No, you know what? That's good. So we can see the pictures, everybody. That's good. So what's your cocktail of choice tonight?
A little Yingling.
Yingling. Okay. All
A
right.
local brew.
Very nice. Very nice.
That's what I pulled out of the fridge.
Hey, that's a good one to pull out of the fridge. So
there you go.
All right. Well, you know what? Since it's just you and me, we're going to start right now.
Cool.
And I am going to welcome my good friend Hugo Lentz to, dare I say live? Kind of live, but recorded in this case, to Lessons from the Front. Hugo Lentz, how the heck are you, man?
I'm doing well. I miss you, Todd. I missed our annual get together in Dallas, man. I always look forward to it, but obviously life had other plans.
I know it, especially the that has become kind of a tradition with Carry the Load. Bringing all of our nonprofit partners in, and everybody gets to share their experiences, and everybody gets to talk about what's allowed them to be successful on the platform. And you guys are now really the Travis Manion Foundation is really kind of one of the old guys of the court. You've been to quite a few of these. It is a shame that we weren't able to do that this year, because I'm telling you, it sneaks up on me every year, but I love it. I look forward to seeing you guys.
It's a great time. And actually this year was going to be, I think, even more fun, because we'd have had the nonprofit summit and then the social on the next day. So more time to hang out and be in Dallas. So good stuff.
Well, we'll definitely do that. We'll definitely do that next year. But you know what? I think it's a good example of how opportunities or obstacles create opportunities, because, Lessons from the Front would not have really morphed into what it is right now, because I was actually trying to overproduce it. And, Carissa and I were able to really, take an idea and turn it into something that works right now. And we feel like it's got legs going forward. So,
yeah.
So anyway, well, let's talk a little bit about Hugo Lentz. First of all, love the background there. And I believe you told me that is at the Marine Corps Marathon.
Yeah, so this is the 2019 Marine Corps Marathon. Travis Manion Foundation puts together a team, a charity team every year. So if you sign up with us, you get a guaranteed slot, and there's a fundraising minimum. And part of the run, you can do a relay. So yeah, I did not do the whole entire marathon, but that's a TMF flag that the middle guy there is carrying. And I think I did like 10 miles, and it was pouring. It was good infantry weather. It was good military weather, made me feel tough. And I know you're a Marine, you always feel tough, but sometimes I need a little bit of bad weather to make me feel good about myself. So.
Okay, well, all right. Well, I'm glad you went there. I didn't have to. It made it easier that you went there. So actually, I do have a very serious question. This is going to come off bad. Does the Army have a marathon?
So we don't. We have the Army 10 miler. It's actually very embarrassing, and I will go even further. Not this past year, but in 2018.
I wasn't trying to take it there, Hugo.
I'm taking it there because I'm embarrassed, and I hope the Army 10 miler hears about this stuff. So what did the Army 10 miler signed up for? It was the first time I'd done it. So it's in DC, pretty hot and humid, and this was the really embarrassing part. The humidity was bad enough that they actually cut the run short. So not only was it the Army 10 miler, but it was like the Army 8 miler. And what was embarrassing about it was, as you know, there's a lot of Army bases in the South. So running in horribly humid weather is nothing new. It's kind of like, that's what the Army is. And so now the Army has this 10 miler, and because it's a little hot and humid out, they had to cut it short. That was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for the Army.
Well, safety first. But honestly, it is for people who aren't aware, DC is a very, very humid town.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
when they call it a swamp, it's literally a swamp.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, hey, we're not really sure where to put the Capitol. Over there, it looks good. Nobody will go there. Exactly. Little did they know that the British found their way there back in a little conflict way back when. But so anyway, so you were in the Army. What did you do in the Army?
So I was a helicopter pilot. My first assignment I went to West Point. My first assignment out of school was flying Hueys in Egypt in the Sinai, which was pretty freaking cool. I was there for a year.
Speaking of hot.
Yeah, but not humid. It's a dry heat. It's not that bad. And then came back to the U.S. and learned how to fly Blackhawks, UH-60s. And that's what I spent the rest of my career flying was Blackhawks for the Army.
So you went from Hueys to Blackhawks.
Yep.
I mean, you were at the academy, so you were obviously not what I would call a dumb individual. How in the world did you end up at West Point?
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of it. I mean, there's a very kind of short, interesting story to that, but the longer one is so my parents. I'm a first generation American. My parents were immigrants from. My mom is Austrian. My dad was German, and they came into the U.S. for education in the 1960s, and they got together and had me. So my upbringing was definitely kind of slanted towards the European side. For instance, I didn't find this out till later. My dad died when I was 8, but I didn't know this till later that he had actually been in the Air Force. And I think he was in the Air Force under the program where you get accelerated citizenship if you're in the military.
Okay.
He did something in the medical arena. I think he was like a nurse for a couple of years. But the other piece of that is I grew up in Plattsburgh, New York. So way, way, way northeastern corner of New York. And at the time when I was there was the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. There were FB-111s and KC-135 tankers. And from as far back as I can remember, I was interested in airplanes and flying. And I remember in 4th grade, somehow I found out that the Air Force recruiter was in our school. And so I ran down to the office and I mean, literally, I think he kind of patted me on my head and said, "Hey, come back in a few years." Because I wanted to fly. I wanted to be, I don't know if I wanted to be in the Air Force, but I wanted to fly. And in high school at some point, and I can't remember exactly why this is, but I remember the moment where I was like, we live in a great country and I want to do my part to contribute to that greatness. But I also want to get an education. I want to get a skill out of it. And so that's that kind. I don't have this specific inspiration for the military, but I just figured out that, hey, this was a great way to do it.
I think you just really touched on it. I mean, to me, that is an inspiration. So your parents immigrated here. Were they married when they immigrated, or did they?
No, they met here. They didn't know each other, but met in the United States.
So they meet in the United States. And my assumption would be they were like a lot of immigrants. They probably didn't speak the language real well. If they did, it was pretty choppy. And so they probably kind of settled in an area where there were a lot of other immigrants. Am I giving a good American story here?
They were in school. So I think they spoke English pretty well. And they were, I do know, to your point, I do know obviously that they were in graduate school when they had me. And I remember the pictures of seeing the graduate school housing, cinder block, essentially dorms, but for families. And I know that they congregated with other immigrants for sure, that were in that grad school program. In fact, to be honest, I didn't realize my mom had an accent until I was like 14 years old. And I made fun of it one day. And that was the last time I made fun of it. I mean, it wasn't pretty.
Oh my gosh. So but you said your father passed away when you were 8.
Yeah. He was killed in a car accident. And so certainly that had a lot of impact on me because my mom and I were on our own for a little bit there. And I think that developed in me this very independent streak, this desire, but necessity of being independent and kind of being on my own. Obviously, my mom was around, but she was working, so I was a latchkey kid, and so a lot of a lot of motivation came from me internally, certainly nurtured by her for sure.
So what's interesting about what you just said is, we had a guest on not too long ago who talked about kind of a similar, you used the term latchkey kid. He did not use that term, but it was kind of what he described. And, he took a really rough path before finding the military and getting on track. You actually, it sounds like, took a very straight and narrow path, probably because you made fun of your mom's accent and she knocked you into next week, and you realized, okay, I'm not going down that road again. Yep. So you got really straight and narrow. You found your way to West Point. Now, was there a reason that you ended up at West Point versus the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy?
So this is the other part of that very interesting story. So I knew that I wanted to be in the military, but I also knew that I wanted to get an education out of it. So it was going to be ROTC or one of the service academies. And I'm dating myself here, but this was the era of Top Gun, the original Top Gun.
Yeah.
Dude, I wanted to fly jets off carriers, man. That was my thing. I wanted to be Tom Cruise. And so I had applied to West Point. I was in the process of applying to Navy. And I think you and everybody listening will be familiar with the fact that to get to one of the academies, you need a nomination from a Congress person.
Right.
And so I went down to Albany, New York, the capital of New York, to get a nomination for the Naval Academy. And somehow in that conversation, it came out that I had been accepted to West Point early. And they said, well, then we're going to give you a nomination to West Point. And that's all she wrote. I ended up at West Point. That was the fall of whatever. And that's, that summer or that late spring, I was showing up at West Point. And I mean, things happen for a reason. I'm happy it happened that way. I was, my West Point career was not stellar, but I loved being in the Army. And so things happen for a reason. And that happened for some, who knows why, but I'm glad it happened that way.
Okay, you cannot gloss over that. You said, my West Point career, I quote, was not stellar. Come on. You're giving the non-scholastic guys like me some hope here.
Dude, I'm convinced that there was somebody at West Point that was looking out for Hugo. Because I was a good student. I mean, to get into West Point, obviously you can't be a dummy.
Sure.
So I was a good student. I was a decent athlete. I was in the school band. I mean, I kind of checked all the blocks. And I got to West Point and I just stumbled all over myself. Academics were hard. I wasn't even that, it wasn't even cool that I was a crappy student, but a great cadet. I was just kind of average or below average all the way around. But I do think at a place like West Point, I was convinced at the time that it took more guts to quit than to stay. That was the first thing. And I remember very distinctly at the end of my plebe year, so your freshman year is the tough year, you get hazed all the time. I remember a senior coming up to me saying, hey, I didn't think you were going to make it. And I was like, all right, man, I'm here. Screw you. I made it through this year and I'll make it through the rest of my time. But I went to summer school every summer. And again, I was average, but I graduated. And again, I think somebody was looking out for me. I don't know who, I don't know why, but.
Well, don't ask questions. Just
you just accept it.
You've heard the term, don't let a gift horse in the mouth. Well, there you go.
There you go. Yep.
So you graduate West Point, and almost certainly you had a haircut that was a little tighter than you do right now. I mean, I'm not.
You had to go there. Really. We knew, actually, for everybody that's watching, we knew that Todd was going to go there. But yeah, I've got the clippers upstairs. They're charging. I want to do, I want to get my deployment haircut, but my wife's not letting me do that. So.
Well, you knew I was going there, but you didn't know when it was coming. So there you go. Okay, so you graduate West Point. You're flying Hueys, is what you said. And so, what unit did you go to right off the bat? And you said Egypt, but
yeah. So this was
first cab or what?
I actually so if my West Point career was below average. I must have come into my own at flight school and officer basic course because I did really well. And I actually could have gotten my choice of any airframe, but I said, you know what? Hueys, I want to build my skills as a pilot. So let me stay with Hueys, which was a pretty unpopular choice. At that time, Hueys were not the primary airframe of the Army. It was the Black Hawk. And so Hueys were coming out. And so I was part of the 1st Support Battalion as part of the MFO, the Multinational Force and Observer. So I was part of 18th Airborne Corps, which was pretty cool, but I was part of a support unit, which at the time was not that cool. But you know what? I got to fly Hueys in Egypt. I got to learn how to dive in the Red Sea. I got to go into Israel. So at the time, things were pretty calm. So we used to go into Israel on a regular basis. I took a tour of the Nile. I mean, for a brand new lieutenant, it was a pretty cool assignment. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, just right off the bat, you got to experience some good stuff. And we could go on and on about, about your career. And we probably cross paths in the Pacific West or Mediterranean. But I always like to hear what stood out. You got a ton of stories, I know, but what's the one story that really stood out, you carry with you to this day, maybe you even reference when you're talking to people as a teaching moment?
That's a tough one. And I, when we first talked about this, I've been thinking about this all day. It's interesting. There's probably 5 or 6 discrete events in my Army career that all taught me significant lessons. The one I want to talk about, and the one that's been on my mind lately, especially in relation to carry the load, is when I was a company commander in Korea. So as a company commander, I was in charge of about 60 people. I had 15 Black Hawks that I owned. And just before I was leaving command, one of my Black Hawks crashed into the side of a mountain. And I lost crew members. So this is 1998, 98. And I had not come in direct contact with fatalities, with deaths in the military. It hadn't happened yet. And this is 1998. So this is pre-Desert Storm, certainly pre-Iraq and Afghanistan. That was a significant event in my life, not only in my military career, but my life. And then what's interesting is that some of those same thoughts and memories came back to me again in Iraq in 2003 when my battalion, so I was a captain in Korea, in my battalion in 2003, I was a major. We had another fatal helicopter crash. And some of those parallels and some of the memories I have of both 1998 and 2003 they stick with me, and I remember all of that pretty vividly. We can keep going down that. Ask me some questions and we can talk about it.
No, I absolutely want to. I mean, so you twice as a commander of troops, you experienced fatalities within your unit because aircraft went down. And, so we're talking minimum of 3 people in each, with a pilot, co-pilot, and crew chief. Let's focus on the first one, because it was the first time you dealt with it, and it was actually a peacetime mission. Correct?
Yep.
And was it a routine flight?
Yeah, very, very routine. It was in the aviation world, there's risk assessment, and you sign off and you say, yes, this mission is good, that you've done an accurate risk assessment, and we did all of that. The aircraft took off in the morning. So Korea's pretty rugged. Northern South Korea is very rugged. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's rugged. And I think I was actually still in my barracks when this crew took off on its mission. A few hours later, the word came back that, hey, we don't know where this aircraft is. And so we did some initial searching. And Korea's got a very well developed radar system, and they track aircraft, and nobody knew where this aircraft was. And so by the afternoon, we knew that something not good had happened. No definitive word on anything, but we knew that nothing, something bad had happened. And I remember getting my company together. So I remember there's about 60 soldiers. And we kind of huddled up. This is in Korea. We kind of huddled up in the rec center of our little base, and just spent time together. And eventually the Air Force search and rescue from further south on the peninsula came up. And they eventually found the aircraft that was essentially there's just kind of this burn streak up the side of a mountain, and about 100 feet below the crest of the hill. So they just got they what's called inadvertent IMC, inadvertent instrument meteorological conditions. So they went into the clouds and got disoriented and slammed into the side of a mountain. And so in the space of roughly 12 hours, we went from, and I know this happens way faster in other instances, but from, hey, life is normal, to 3 people just died it wasn't a training accident, because they were going over to a different base to pick up leaders to take them to a meeting. So it wasn't true training.
But it was routine.
But it was routine, and it was not combat. So yeah, it's interesting how the world shifts in such a short time.
So, okay, what's interesting about that is there's this interesting thought process within the military, or not necessarily within the military community, but outside of the military community, rather, with people looking in. And they look at something like that and they're like, oh, well, that's no big deal, because that could happen just the same to Johnny and Sue driving down the street, minding their own business, and, a truck hits them and they perish. But it's different when you're talking about the military, and you're talking about, there's always a threat, even though it may be routine, even though it may be a training mission, nobody's firing bullets.
Right.
It is not the same as just driving to the store. But so how did you deal with that? Obviously you had to write letters home.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, it's all kind of a blur. So that evening we knew that the aircraft had crashed, and it took another day or two for the remains to be recovered, because it was such rugged terrain. And what's wild is, before I'd been in Korea, I was stationed at Fort Drum, New York, and worked in an infantry brigade, and the operations officer of that infantry brigade, who is actually now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley.
Wow.
When he was a major, when we were in Korea, he was a battalion commander, and his battalion, or elements of his battalion, were tasked to go up onto this hillside and recover the remains. So everything is kind of a blur. I remember the ceremony. We had it in the gym. For anybody that's in the Army, it was Camp Stewart in Camp Stanley in Korea. Had it in the gym, and I remember very much coming together as a company, as our unit, very kind of tightening up. But what was funky is, within a month, I had changed command and was now back to the United States. So it was this weird blur of change of command, inventories, and prepping my successor. And then, holy cow, we have this horrific accident with three service members killed. And then boom, I'm back on my way to the United States. And I just remember this now, is I remember coming back to the United States, going to a movie, and the movie was Saving Private Ryan.
Oh my.
Seeing that movie and having this very clear memory of my soldiers getting killed. I was crying like a baby during Saving Private Ryan. Was
that movie, when you saw that movie, was that able to put into cinema all the feelings that you'd had bottled up inside?
I think so. I mean, the movie, if I remember correctly, the movie opens up with the car driving up to the farmhouse to let the mom know that you know her son has been killed. And I mean, that and the friend I was with really knew nothing about the military, so it was wild how different our experiences were, of me seeing this movie and knowing those emotions, and this guy sitting next to me who could only watch the movie and kind of guess at what those emotions were. That was wild. That was and was frankly one of the first times that I saw this separation between the military and those that serve and those that haven't. That kind of really brought it starkly to light.
What was your takeaway from that experience? How did that change you?
I'll answer that in a couple different ways. One of the things I very distinctly remember is, so if you remember, they crashed up on a hillside, and it took a couple days to recover the bodies, and then the bodies were mangled enough and burned enough that really only the pilot, Norm Flecker, was kind of still somewhat identifiable, and he was down in the morgue. So I was up in Camp Stanley, so kind of half an hour from the DMZ, but I had to go down to Seoul to the morgue there to attempt to identify the body. And I remember walking in, and you know, he'd been there a little bit, but they'd frozen. I mean, he was frozen because you need to do that. And you know, I didn't know what to expect. And I remember taking a look at this, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you whether that's Norm Flecker or not, because he was mangled enough. But the thing that really sticks in my mind is the smell. I mean, that I can still smell the smell of death, and that bothered me for months afterwards. I mean, unfortunately, the last memory I have of Norm Flecker is the smell, and that was that was tragic. And I think so. I mean, that was kind of the physical reaction. I think the emotional reaction was, this is a dangerous business we're in, and I would never wish this experience on anybody. And Norm and Riley and Ryan, the guys on that flight, I mean, they went out there doing what they loved. I mean, this was Korea. I remember it was a gorgeous day. It was a little bit cloudy. I'm sure they were thrilled to go out and fly that morning. And then they weren't. And so
life had other plans.
Yeah. How quickly that changes, how dangerous a business we're in, even though we're the best trained military in the world. You know, a whole bunch of different emotions kind of came into play there. And it was
how
just
did that
something
make you
that
fly?
stayed with me.
The next time you went up, how did that make you approach the flight?
Yeah. I think at that point I was still kind of in shock, and because I was a company commander, I was a leader. And so in my mind, I was like, I got to get out. I got to get back in the saddle. I got to go fly, and I got to show all my soldiers that, hey, you know, stuff happens. We're in a dangerous business. People die, but Riley and Norm and Ryan would want us to keep flying, and let's do that. You know, we can't let this slow us down. We have to acknowledge it, but we can't let it slow us down.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I hadn't really thought about it right up until something you said a minute ago, but it ties back to, you know, I don't know if you saw our interview with Jake Schick last week of 22 Killed, but, you know, Jake talked about, well, actually, I kind of brought it up because it was part of the inspiration behind this whole thing. But, you know, he talked about, you know, when he found himself on the ground, somehow conscious, but mangled. He's looking up at his squad saying, hey, who's got the perimeter here? You know, we need 360 security. And it really, it speaks to what you just said. Bad things happen. Okay. And COVID is a really perfect example of that. Bad things happen, but life cannot stop. And we have to go on. And so the leadership that you displayed there, I think, is spot on. But you had to have been scared. You had to have been double.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, you know this. We're trained to, you know, it's okay to be scared. I mean,
Amen.
I mean, it's probably good to be scared, right? It's good to have fear. The key, what we get trained for is to drive on through that fear. And so, yeah, I think everybody was probably a little shaky and a little bit nervous. But I think as more time, you know, obviously people got more comfortable. And the thing about Korea is for the Army anyway, is you have 1 year tours. So within a year of that time, it would have been a whole new unit, which I think helped the unit heal and helped individuals heal. I mean, I was out of there within 2 months. And I think that was probably a good thing. I was heading on to different things. And there was a new company commander behind me who was going to keep leading the unit. So,
thank you for sharing that. That's a powerful story, and I especially appreciate you focusing on the peacetime accident, because that's what a lot of people simply don't understand is, you know, there's sometimes no way to avoid that in peace, and it's still a dangerous business even in peacetime.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Well,
for sure.
So all right, so let's shift gears. You get out of the Army, and how long have you been out now?
So I got out in 2013. So, you know, this length of hair is about 2 months worth, but yeah, so 7 years. So.
Well, and we may have to have you on again to talk about your experience during Iraq and Afghanistan. But I know that when you got out, you eventually found your way into the Travis Manion Foundation, where you are very, very involved. And you guys have been a great partner leading the way up in the Northeast. So let's talk about that. Take that wherever you want to go. Yeah.
So well, I mean, very briefly, I got out of the military, and I like to think of myself as a pretty resilient guy. You know, not that the military really didn't define me. So I got out, and I struggled. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember going into the on-site job interview for my first job after the military, and I was like, this is going to suck. It was a cubicle farm. I didn't see anybody. I didn't hear anybody. And I was like, this is going to suck, but it must be my new normal. This must be what being a civilian is like. Needless to say, that job didn't last very long. I hated it. So I decided to pursue working at a bike shop because I love to pedal bike, you know, on a bicycle. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, this is an opportunity to chase a passion of mine. It was retail, so it kind of sucked. I didn't get paid a whole lot. I didn't have weekends. But one day, Ryan Manion, who is Travis Manion's surviving sister, came in one day to buy a bike. We started chatting. She found out I was a veteran. And she said, hey, we're thinking about expanding one of our programs. Give me a call in a couple months. And so I did. And I'd known about the Travis Manion Foundation. Our ethos is, our motto is, if not me, then who? And I remember seeing that and saying, wow, that sounds like something a Roman general or a Greek philosopher would say. And it was a 26-year-old Marine who said, if not me,
I'm sorry, who? It was a 26-year-old what?
Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, we'll just, yeah, it was a Marine. Good one, Todd. That was good. That was good. That was a good point out. And so I knew about Travis Manion Foundation, and I realized from my time out of the military to the time that I started working for them that the military and that need to serve was something that was ingrained in me. And so I ended up at TMF and have been there since 2015. Love it. I love the fact that I can tell my story and give my experience to other veterans who are transitioning. The fact that we develop character in youth and that we can get communities activated, that we can have partners like Carry the Load that realize the importance of Memorial Day and realize the importance of veterans and those that have fallen. I mean, it's a great space to be in. It's a great organization to work for. And I love everything that we do.
Tell us what the main focus of the Travis Manion Foundation is.
Yeah, so the main focus is to inspire others to live by the if not me, then who ethos. The primary audience that we do that with is youth, and we leverage the experience of veterans and survivors, so those that have lost somebody in the military, to talk to youth about character. And then the extension of that is, how do we get communities to live by the if not me, then who ethos, civilians and veterans and survivors? And then by further extending that, how do we inspire others to live by this ethos? And what's interesting during the time of COVID is well-being is something that I think a lot of people overlook during this time, although now it's getting attention. And we feel strongly that getting involved with Travis Manion Foundation will help your individual well-being, to go out there and serve, to help youth become better leaders, and to show the value of veterans and survivors to the United States, and to, with you, recognize the meaning of Memorial Day, to recognize the sacrifices of others.
Y'all have been a fantastic partner. I mean, we are so blessed as an organization, and thereby I think as a country, to be coming into contact with groups like yours. Y'all get it. And we will come across organizations on occasion who are very simply looking to advance their own cause without looking around and seeing, their left flank and their right flank, and saying, wow, together we are a force multiplier. Oh, yeah. And y'all get it. Y'all got it early on. I mean, y'all do great work. I'm going to give a shout out to Crest down in Houston, one of our another Marine, by the way. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah, right. I was a diversity hire as an Army guy, so just so you know.
Well, see, don't let anybody say that we don't include everyone. Okay. No, you guys do a fantastic job. You do great work. And I want to encourage people to go check out the organization, because y'all are a class act. We recognize that. We love y'all as a partner because of all the wonderful things you do. And we ask that you continue to do those wonderful things as our partner, because it's been a great match.
We love partnering with you guys, and it's one team, one fight. It's awesome. Partnership is hard to do because it requires sacrifices on both sides, in my opinion. So true partnership is rare to find, and we found that with you guys. So Carry the Load, thanks for what you're doing. I'm thrilled that we can work together, and I love the partnership that we have.
Well, I'm going to ask you who you're carrying in just a minute, but before I go down that road, I want to actually I want to admit something to everyone. And that is, I was a little nervous about being on this call with you, because I hear your voice and I'm like, man, I don't know if I should be interviewing Hugo, and he's got like the golden voice that, quite honestly, I shouldn't be interviewing him. I mean, that voice, that daggone thing's so strong. He should be doing this show, not me. Man, well, you've got like the coolest voice. I know you've heard that before too.
I appreciate that. Now you're embarrassing me, so thanks for putting me on the spot.
Well, it's all right. I mean, I will do that from time to time. So tell us, who are you carrying this year?
Yeah, so I'm carrying Lieutenant Norm Flecker, CW2 Riley Mason, and Specialist Ryan Shears. I mean, that's a portion of who I'm carrying. Those are the crew members that were killed in Korea in 1998. And that was my first experience with that kind of tragedy in the military. And so that's who I'm carrying. And I remember them. I remember them being in my unit, and they'll never be forgotten. So they're always out there, always out there.
Well, if you have not already done so, I would challenge you in the very least to get Lieutenant Norm Flecker's. Um, I would like to see him added as a storyboard, because I think your story about him is very important. And, you know, again, we want people to understand that Carry the Load acknowledges the sacrifices of all those in service to this country. Sometimes it happens in peacetime, sometimes it happens on the battlefield. At the end of the day, it is a sacrifice like no other.
Yep.
So I would encourage you to do that. I would challenge you to do it if it's not already done.
Will do. Good challenge. I love it.
Challenge accepted. All right. Hugo, thank you very much, man. It's a pleasure seeing you. I look forward to the next time, and all you guys at Travis, man, y'all are doing great work. You are fine Americans, sir.
Well, Todd, you and your team, Debbie Wright, Arena, I mean, you guys are kicking butt. So thanks for what you're doing. And thanks for being so flexible in these weird times. I mean, that shows a true organization that can meet the challenges, is dealing with this kind of stuff during these weird times. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your kind words. And for everybody else out there, tune in, let's see, Thursday. It will be our next opportunity to get together. We have a very interesting story. And this comes from one of our other partners, Patriot Paws. You're going to want to stick around for this one. It is a neat story. And so for everybody at Carry the Load, my name is Todd Boeding. I am carrying Sergeant R.E. Worley of Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. Who are you carrying?